It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today's guest is Jeffrey Stark. Jeffrey's the founder and chairman of the board of directors of Senneca Holdings. He served as the CEO of Senneca and its portfolio companies for 10 years before being elevated to the chairman role earlier this year. In his current role, he works with the executive team to identify, acquire, and integrate operating companies within Senneca. Jeffrey received his MBA from the University of Michigan and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Michigan Technological University. He and his wife Patty reside in Clearwater Beach and Summer in Michigan. Jeffrey Stark, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you.
Now, it's great to have you here. And as we talked a couple of weeks ago, very, very interesting to learn about, kind of the development of your business. You've done some pretty amazing things. I guess one calls it a roll up, right, in the building materials industry and the various things that you've done. And we'll get to that in a bit. But we kind of like to start in the early years and, tell me a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Yeah, Brant. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, home of coal mining and steel mills, about 25 miles south of Pittsburgh.
Family involved in those businesses or one or the other?
Yeah, very much so. My father was a welder in the steel mills, and my grandfather worked in the rail rolling mills. My brother did a little bit of work in the coal mines. So, it's a typical middle-class family, in a very working class town.
And kind of some transformation. I mean, I don't know if all those industries have gone away. I know many of them have transformed. Did that kind of affect the previous generation and or your generation where a lot of those jobs shut down over time, or has that not really hit your family as hard as others?
Oh, no, it's hit the area extremely hard.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, a lot of folks graduated, they went to work in the mills, and I actually spent a couple summers in the mill. But they actually tore down the mill a few years back, and they still do a little coal mining, but most of the steel mills in the town I grew up in, it's completely gone, and it's just a riverfront now.
Wow. So hard times. So were you kind of exposed to some of that? Did you see some of the, effects of that in the local economy as you grew up?
Oh, yeah. It was the mill's obviously a very union environment, right. And there's always activity going on, and especially when they had issues at the mill.
Sure. Brothers and sisters, Jeffrey?
Yeah. I've got an older sister who always thinks she's a younger sister, and two younger brothers.
Got it. So kind of right in the middle there.
Yeah.
Right. And mom and dad, you mentioned dad's work. Did mom work from the home or pretty busy bringing up 4 kids during those years?
Yeah. My mom was a nurse, so she worked part-time for a long time, and so that she was home with us. But she worked in the local hospital and as a nurse.
Right. What were some of the things that influenced or inspired you by your parents in those early years?
My dad, he was an athlete growing up, and he was really a guy that encouraged all of us to do better and really to be the best that we could be at whatever it was that we chose to do.
Nice.
sports, school, life in general. He really believed in that, and he pushed us, really hard as kids, to do that. I remember the first time he told me I needed more elbow grease, and I go into the garage looking for a can of elbow grease.
I love that. Oh, great. Did you come and show it to him and say,
No,
how about this, Dad?
I came back. I go, I can't find it. What, did you hide it from me?
Oh, you must have got a good laugh out of that.
I'm sure.
What sports did he play?
My dad was a baseball player.
Baseball player.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. And did you pursue some sports as well then as you went through school?
I did. I played a lot of different sports. Baseball, basketball, football. I ran track a little bit.
Right.
I did a lot of different things. That was important. My dad really pushed us.
Sure.
To be active. I think it kept us busy and learn, team skills.
Right.
And kept you out of trouble, I think, was his big thing.
During those after school hours, right?
Exactly. And he was really tough, but good. And,
right.
My mom was always the one that was there to, help us when, things didn't always work as the way we had hoped they would. She was very encouraging.
Sure. What other types of things outside of class? Music, theater? Were you involved in any other types of things other than sports?
Not really. I was mostly involved in sports. I did a lot of photography work as a young person.
Oh, that's fun.
But I spent most of my free time, in sports and playing, anything that we can get our fingers on.
Were you a good student, Jeffrey?
In high school, I was considered a very good student, but it was in a small high school, and I thought I was actually pretty good at like math and science. And when I went to college, I kind of realized that I wasn't that good at it.
It's a different level, right?
It is different, more competitive kids, better schools.
Were there some other influencers during those days, coaches or, folks that you had a chance to, get to know that also provided you some inspirational lessons as you were growing up?
Yeah, my grandfather, my mom's dad, he was probably one of the bigger influences in my life, and he was a wonderful man. And he always taught us to do the right thing. And of course, he used to pick us up for church every Sunday and make sure we went to church with him. But he was a man of faith.
Sounds like
absolutely, and he encouraged us to always do the right thing. When I started playing sports, you have some really good coaches and some lousy coaches, but I was fortunate enough that some of them took an interest in me and they try to push me to do my best. And I remember our high school football coach. He was a man of faith also, and he used to tell us this saying every day at the end of practice, and it's kind of stuck with me. And it went like this: "If not me, who? If not now, when?" And I always thought about that. Why put off something you can do today, right?
That's a good lesson.
And don't count on somebody else to do it. You need to be the one to get it done at times. So
yeah. Well, you obviously went into entrepreneurial things a little later in your career. What about when you were growing up? Was there the ubiquitous paper route? Did you sell, cards at Christmas time? What types of lemonade stand? What types of things, if any, were you involved with for an entrepreneurial nature?
I had a paper route from the time I was about 12 until I actually graduated from high school.
Nice.
And my brother had a paper route, and they were kind of connected, which was nice because then he took it over and he had this really big paper route.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did a lot of different things. I cut a lot of lawns, for gas money. I worked at the neighborhood grocery store. I got to, all these things. A young boy, they want you to unload the truck and stock the shelves,
Sure.
And then I got to learn how to work in the meat department. I mean, the family that owned it was very kind to me. And, I worked there as often as I could. And then a couple of my buddies, we would unload railroad cars full of sugar and flour for the local baker downtown on a weekly basis. So, it it was a lot of odd things.
Right.
Anything to make gas money and be able to go out.
do the stuff on the weekends, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What, again, any lessons that you learned from some of those early entrepreneurial things that served you later in life?
Well, I think probably the most important thing was to be polite, pleasant, and respectful of people. And they always will call you back if you do a good job and you're polite. Right. And they think you're a hard worker, and you're not sloughing or relaxing on the job. And you get both my dad and my grandfather pushing me really hard. And so when you go to work with somebody, you want to do the best that you can in any situation.
Yeah. Awesome. And was it kind of a foregone conclusion that you'd go to college? Was that something that mom and dad wanted for you? Was it more self-motivated? Or can you tell us a little bit about, the decisions around your choice of going to school?
Well, it wasn't a foregone conclusion. I was the first one in my family to go to a 4-year college.
Older sis didn't.
She went to nursing school.
Okay, got it.
And I was fortunate enough to be a good enough athlete, but not a great athlete, to get an academic and football scholarship.
Oh, nice.
And that really helped because I think without that, I probably wouldn't have been able to get the education I got.
Right.
Or we would have struggled to try to make it work.
Yeah. And how did you decide what to study?
Well, growing up in Western Pennsylvania, it was pretty obvious, I guess, I thought I was a good math and science student, and everybody told me I was. So I should study engineering. And I got my scholarship for mining engineering, which, again, made sense to come back and work in Western Pennsylvania in the mines or in the steel mills. And so I went to Michigan Tech, which is an engineering school. And they had a good football program and a great engineering program for studying mining engineering.
Yeah.
So that was my fortunate ability to leave what I would consider to be having to work in the mills if I was unable to get educated.
Right. And did you go on and get a master's later on, or right to work after your bachelor's?
Well, I have to tell you, I actually never got a degree in engineering. After the first year, I didn't do well in math and science and was told that I probably belonged in the business school.
Gently?
Kind of by the dean of the School of Engineering. And so I was home that summer working in the mills, and I got a call from the school telling me this, and that I would need to move into the business program. So I went down and met with my dad's accountant and asked him, about business, and he said I should get a degree in accounting. So I transferred into the business school and got an undergraduate degree in accounting and finance. And the math there was a lot easier than
exactly
it was
right. You put it to good use.
I did, and then after graduation, I went to work as an auditor for a department store chain in Manhattan.
Okay. That was the first job out of college.
That was my first job out of college. Yep. And was a traveling auditor going around to our various departments across the country. So, back in the day, it was called Allied Department Stores, and we owned all the high-end department store chains like Brooks Brothers and Bonwit Teller. And so we would go out and do operational, financial, and IT audits of each of the operating divisions. And it was a team of us that went out and did that. And it was a really great experience for the first job. You learned a lot.
Sure.
You got connected with the division staff, the presidents and his teams, because you were the corporate person, represented what you're working with. So you had to work really close with the leadership and the executive teams. And they expected a lot from you as the corporate member.
Right. And did you have leadership? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not in the very beginning. We worked kind of on teams. There was always a senior on site, but I didn't have a lot of direct reports. I had no direct reports in my first job.
In that job.
No.
And how long did you stay with that?
I did that for 2 years, and then I moved to Michigan and got married. and went to work for another retailer as the director of internal audit. And so there I had my first staff of people to direct.
So that was the first time you started managing people.
Yes.
Yeah. What were some of the earliest leadership lessons you learned from, that job and bosses and mentors you had, good and bad? You don't need to mention any names on the bad. Sometimes those examples are some of the best too.
Well, some of the earlier stuff, I worked for a CEO as the director of internal audit, and he was a great gentleman, taught me an awful lot. And he always taught me to be fair and compassionate. It was an auditor. You're looking for things that need to be improved. And he knew you were going to find them. But his expectation was that you did it the right way. You communicated positively. You never knew where people were coming from that day, if they had a bad day that morning or something, an issue with a child. But treat them like you want to be treated. Be tactful and compassionate. And and he said that will go an awful long way. And I think he was right. Very good
lessons. And sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I was going to say on the bad side, you got people that they talk over people. They don't listen to you. They don't value your opinions. And I think you lose people really quickly if they don't think you're listening to them and they don't think they're valued.
Yeah, no question about it. And you see that as an example, and that helps you as well with regards to how you work with others.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. You don't think about when a person comes into the office that day, what are they leaving behind? Is it a good experience, a bad experience? So that, kids have problems, parents have issues, and they're coming to work to do a job, and you want to treat them the best way that you can and get the maximum out of them while they're there.
Right. You'd mentioned early on about your grandfather and, going to Sunday school and, kind of the faith-based, lessons he had. Did that serve you well? Did those types of things, in your early life, things like the golden rule, treating other people like you want to be treated, and some of the lessons that CEO left with you, did those principles help you along the way?
Absolutely. And I really think that, having that sort of an upbringing and an education and the positive thinking that helped with allowed me to advance my career differently than some of my peers may have.
Yeah, right. So you're in a senior audit position in another retailer. How long did you kind of stay in the financial functions until you actually moved to the corner office or at least the C-suite?
Probably 20 years in financial and operational roles. And I worked for a number of retailers, and
big and small.
Yeah, mostly big. So my last retail role, I was a VP of finance with Kmart when the bankruptcy occurred.
Oh gosh.
And most of us senior finance people found ourselves unemployed.
Right.
And I got a call from a gentleman who told me he was the father of one of my staff members.
Oh.
That I actually didn't know the staff member because I had such a big department. And he asked me to lunch. And he explained to me he worked for a private equity company, and they had a automotive electronics business that sold into the retail channel that was having troubles. And he asked me if I wanted to take a look at it and see if I can come up with any ideas to help fix the business. So I went down and I worked with him, and I put together what I thought was a good turnaround plan to help improve the business. And then they asked me to become the CEO and implement the plan.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. That was fortuitous.
Yeah. For 2 years, we did just that. We improved the business, got it moving in the right direction. And then the same group of guys ultimately then asked me to run an industrial cleaning business that they had just bought. And
backing up a little bit, what do you think motivated this father of one of the employees to reach out to you?
Well, he told me at lunch, he said his son said that, I was a great communicator, very positive guy, and, just got caught up in the changes of, corporate finance.
And that was at Kmart, right?
And that was at Kmart, yeah. And it's great because I still talk to both the son and the father today, and they're great people. But it just out of the blue, he called me and said, my son said I should talk to you, and it's okay. And
that's something.
Yeah, and it's the.
Now I know you're being humble. I'm sure this employee really admired you as a boss, right? Because private equity guys don't always reach out directly to corporate folks unless they're really impressed. So it sounds like you made quite an impression on that young employee.
Probably. And the thing that when I came home and I told my wife all about this, and I said, I try to treat everybody the exact same way and try to make sure they feel good about what they do and the teams that they're on. And I said, his son worked in one of the departments, I think it was supply chain, and he was an analyst. So I didn't even know him. But he was in meetings, and he would sit through the town halls, and we would talk about, making the business better and trying to be a positive improvement inside our jobs. And, so, I think if you treat people right, those things come back to you, more than you think they will.
That's a great example, Jeff. It really is. And it just proves the fact that, again, treating people equally, being fair, being treated like you want to be treated is a big part of being successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And so the first couple of CEO jobs then, and they were private equity. So what, middle market, $50, $100 million sales? Was that kind of the size at that time, or larger than that?
The industrial business that they had bought was, I think, $60 million when they bought it.
Right.
We grew it in about 2.5 years into about 230 or 240 million.
Fantastic.
Through some acquisitions, and we actually split that business off between industrial cleaning and underground sewer repair business.
Okay. And then did you come into kind of the building materials in that direction, or how did you kind of come into that industry?
So I was working in running this business in Houston, this industrial cleaning business in Houston at the time, and traveling weekly. And I really wanted to get closer to home. And my wife obviously was working at the time. So an opportunity came up as the CEO. It was a building materials door company in Michigan.
Right.
It was a small business, about $12 million. And I decided to try it. It was the first non-family CEO. The mother had passed away at 93, and she was the last family CEO. So taking over a private equity backed first non-family business was really an interesting experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And it was turned into a great business, because that's the beginning of Senneca Holdings. Is we bought this restaurant door business, and over the course of 10, 11 years, we completed a number of acquisitions and have rolled up a nice building materials business that's $240 million of revenue to it.
Awesome. Now, I noted that you did get your MBA along the way. We got a little sidetracked when you changed your course. Now, when was that? Was that during your years at Kmart, or was that prior to or after?
No. So when I moved back to, after my first job in Manhattan, when I moved back to Michigan to get married, I was working in the auditing area, and got exposed to the CEO, and told him I wanted to go back and get a master's, but I had a young child, so I decided to do the night program. And he was kind enough to write me a letter of recommendation, and another board member was. And so I went to the University of Michigan's night program for my MBA. Yeah, it took me 3 years.
Yeah, worked during the day and did that the night and weekends.
Yep. So it was a 3-year program. So it was a great program. It allowed me to continue my education, and it's different than doing the day program, but everybody in the night program is working.
Right. What would you say was the best benefit from your MBA over the course of your career from the time that you completed it to today?
I think the best thing that they taught us was that things are widgets, and you can solve any problem if you think about it and you apply business principles to it. So if you're in fast food restaurants, if you're in retail, if you're in manufacturing, if you're in services, hospital, we did all these case studies on how to solve problems, how to apply it in that arena. And you worked in small groups. And so you have different personalities all the time, and you're trying to work together to come up with the best solution. And everybody always has the best solution. And how do you come up with what's the best solution for that environment? And I thought that was the best part of that program. It didn't matter if you were working in an operational class, a strategy class, or a finance class.
Yeah, cool. And so that was pre-Kmart years then, right? So
yes,
before you went to the larger companies. Got it.
Yep.
Terrific. And do you think an MBA is for everyone that may be pursuing a corner office opportunity?
I don't think it's for everyone, but I think that it helps for people because they teach you, depending on what your discipline is as a background, they teach you all these other disciplines. So a lot of people in a sales side, they don't have the financial side, they don't have the operational side. They teach you a lot more different things in the MBA program and kind of get you ready for leadership.
Right. Understood. Yeah. And so fast forward now to Senneca Holdings. Now, as you mentioned, you started with, was it Eliason Door? Was that the name of it? Okay, got it. So that was the first company. What kind of presented the opportunity and kind of the mindset for doing this roll up of, finding other folks that were, some I'm sure were direct competitors, other had businesses that maybe were similar to what you were doing. Was it the strength of Eliason and where you folks were? Was it the kind of the opportunities that you saw with ownership of some of these other firms, a natural consolidation that was taking place? All of the above,
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about your thinking.
I was going to say a lot of it's all of the above, but we at Eliason made a very specific door. A lot of our business was in the restaurant space.
You mentioned that. Yeah.
So when you go in a restaurant, the door between the kitchen and the dining room was really Eliason's bread and butter. And we did a lot of small mom and pop supermarket chains between the stock room and the sales floor, and that was pretty much our business.
Right.
And it made a lot of sense to me that when you walk in a building, a commercial building or an industrial building, there are doors everywhere.
Right.
And which doors are the ones that you don't buy at a Home Depot or a Lowe's that require a contractor to install them, that just not an average person can do? And how can we get more doors in a particular establishment of business? So you can either develop those doors, or you can go out and look for who has the best product in the industry, or who has the best brand reputation, which to me, the brand reputation has been what's driven most of the acquisitions through the years. Somebody that has a high quality brand recognition in their particular niche. And then we would do an acquisition of those and integrate it and consolidate it into our manufacturing facilities.
Right.
And it's worked out really well because, that we had our largest competitor at the time at Eliason was Chase Doors in Cincinnati, and we ultimately merged Chase and Eliason.
Okay.
And because Chase had one style door that was the same, but a lot of different doors.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, we had, $65 million in revenue. And the private equity group really wanted to improve the business and look for more opportunities. So we've done, probably 11 acquisitions in the last 7 years, and all different kinds of doors. And we've actually moved into like glass doors that you see in supermarkets. We make a lot of those now, the reaching glass doors. We bought a business that does enclosures for the data center, the computer rooms, they have doors on the front of them to keep the rooms cool and warm. And so there's a lot of places and applications for doors.
When you begin thinking about it, it's kind of mindless. You're like, well, there's so many different things, and we're always going to have doors.
always.
Has technology had a big impact on how the door business has evolved over, the last decade or so that you've been involved with it?
It has, but not on the door side as much.
Right.
We use a lot more technology in the machines to make the product.
Right.
But what's really evolved is the locking systems and the technology to, keypads and wireless locking of doors, which we don't participate in. We're just the door manufacturer.
Right.
But that's really where the technology side is going. But from a door perspective, we're trying to make high quality custom doors that a builder or contractor could put into an opening. And the big moat around this business is making sure you can deliver fast and make them to fit an opening so that they don't come from China.
Right. Yeah. And that's the biggest competitor, I would imagine, over time.
Over time, it's absolutely the largest competitor. And if you make the door to fit an opening, and we love rough contractors because they don't make anything square. And so therefore it has to be
custom work.
Exactly. And they pay more for that. And it's very custom and it fits an opening. And if you think about if you had to buy something from overseas, it's on the water for 30 days or 21 days. And so we can get you that door in 48 hours, 72 hours. And so we use technology in our buildings to get the information into the computer system, manufacture the doors, and get the product out to a job site. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. And we mentioned your bio. You've recently moved into the chairman's role. Is that within the last year, Jeffrey? Or
yes.
Because you were CEO for a good decade or so.
Yes. And in the private equity world, they buy businesses and they hold them for a window of time, and the management team is expected to stay depending on where you are in the life cycle and stay through the sell period. And so we sold the business last May to a different private equity group. And through that process, I told them I really didn't want to stay another 5 years.
Your window.
Yeah. And so they got a new CEO, and I've been helping them with the acquisition strategy.
Awesome.
Mostly.
Yeah. Cool. How would you say your leadership styles evolved over time, Jeffrey?
Well, I think that how I think about it and what other people would say about me is I'm probably a very demanding leader. I know that I expect everyone to do their best to move the business forward. And where I think I've really kind of evolved is in my communication style and the level of compassion that I bring to each of these situations. In the beginning, I didn't have as much compassion for the situation. I was just trying to move the ball forward at all costs. And I think because of that, you become a better listener and you want to understand the situation. And probably the most important thing for me has been that I can help you with problem solving. I don't have all the answers just because I'm the CEO. I think a lot of people think the CEO has all the answers, or he wants to give you all the answers.
Right.
And I don't. I mean, in the beginning, I thought I had a lot of the answers, but what you realize is all the people that work for you, they're really bright. And if you surround yourself with bright people and you let them go, they're going to come up with a better collective solution to a problem. And it's just, you got to just support them in making that happen.
Yeah. One of the challenges in the approach that you've had over the years with Senneca with buying and, kind of doing the roll up is really kind of managing and developing the company culture, right? Because there's two ways to look at it. You either look for companies that are aligned with you in culture, but may not be the best competitive fit and or, product fit, or you buy companies that are extremely different and then you kind of have that cultural fit challenge. What did you find as you went through the process of some of the purchases that you have done and are now doing in kind of managing the cultural aspect of, keeping what I guess started really as the Eliason Doors culture, right? Yep. As you've expanded it into these other businesses.
That is probably the most difficult part of every acquisition is trying to establish, at least a high level, your culture inside their business. Because you're buying a business that has a manufacturing plant and they've already have an established culture of their own. Right. So the most important part for them to feel like they're part of the bigger brand and that we have cultural beliefs and we kind of display them and we try to educate them on those cultures. So we want them to see the big Seneca picture. And then we do a lot of things to try to connect facilities and do town hall meetings and we put up, communication vehicles, creating monthly messages electronically, trying to talk about our values and how somebody is living them at work. But it's probably been the most difficult thing because I think we have 20 facilities across the globe now. Wow. And it's just hard when you buy somebody and they've worked one way, and we're very metrics oriented. And when you have that many plants, you have to run them that way, understanding the metrics. And that culture has to, that they have, you want it to stay, but you want it to mushroom into part of what Seneca does. And it's the hardest thing to really get accomplished.
So it sounds like kind of the latter. A lot more of the companies you've purchased have had different cultures than what Eliason or the original Eliason and that molded into Seneca has had. Would that be an accurate statement?
That is very accurate.
Yeah. That can be a challenge.
It is.
So, but it sounds like that's the right way to do it. Here's who we are. This is who we want you to be, right? And then monitor and measure how they perform against that.
Yeah, and then getting out there. So, when you start to get too many facilities, we want to make sure that we use videos and other ways of communicating so they know who you are. So when you walk into a plant, they don't just see a suit coming in. They know who you are and they know what position you have in the company, and they should feel comfortable enough to come up and talk to you. And talk about their problems or talk about what they're doing to improve their job. So when I walk plants, I love it when people come up and tell me all the things that they've done on their own to make it better or faster.
Right. Have you found there's been instances where you've purchased companies that go, wow, they do this a little differently, but that's pretty cool. Let's absorb that and make it a part of who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's happened probably, as many times as it hasn't, that we found something that they do that's so great that how can we implement that across the other businesses?
Yeah.
And
broaden
that helps with the culture when they know that, we bought this business in Salt Lake City and here's how they do this particular task and let's roll it out to all the other facilities. So then the Salt Lake people are out helping, teaching, and they're proud of that, how they're adding to the Seneca culture. So we do look for those nuggets in each of the businesses that we can pull out and use across the platform. We think that's very important.
Very cool. Yeah, great. Well, you've been very generous with your time. I had just a couple other questions. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
I try to find people that are willing to invest in themselves to learn. And, I really like in the interview process, I like to find out if they've taken like measured risks in prior jobs and either succeeded or failed. And I don't really care if they failed or not, but I want to know what they learned from it and how they improved from that. Because, people that aren't willing to take the risk, and they expect us to tell them what to do. So I'd much rather have them take the risk and fail or succeed, but they're not going to bankrupt us. So take the small risk. Let's see how well it worked. I like that a lot. And I also have always liked people that played on teams, some organized team. I don't care if it's pee-wee baseball when you're little, but they learn how to work together to solve problems. And I think team players, they have that win-win attitude. So that has really been important to me. Not that everybody we've hired has been a team member, but you can definitely see how they interact, the ones that are team members and the ones that aren't.
Well, and work with people with other skill sets than themselves. That's key, right? Because you've got to be able to recognize there's more than one way to get to the end goal. And, your way may be better than mine, Jeffrey. So I better be open to that because you've had certain set of experiences. And, so often I know I had that challenge early on. It was that kind of cookie cutter approach. And you learn pretty quickly that, you've got to, if you surround yourself with smart people, you're going to find new ways of doing things. So
absolutely.
I like that.
And I think that challenges people, and that's why they want to come to work for you because they know that's part of the culture.
Right. Awesome. Last question, what career and life advice would you give to our middle market audience who's got their eyes on their own corner office someday?
Well, I think probably one of the more important things that people can to get there is just to never give up. You're going to have setbacks. It's going to happen in life. I didn't expect to lose my job at Kmart.
Sure.
It's going to happen, but you never give up. You keep pushing. And I will tell people, learn more, do more, take on more, because that's going to improve you either for the company you're in or the opportunity to get into the corner office. Right. And always treat people with great respect. Help the people around you to do better. And I also think it's extremely important to stay humble in your role, because people don't want to work for somebody that's very arrogant.
Terrific. Well, Jeffrey Stark, founder, most recently CEO and current chairman of the board of directors of Senneca Holdings, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.